One last time. Good morning, John.
Jaron Owen, good morning. How you doing?
How was it?
That was an amazing day. Extremely special occasion and a cherished memory for life. Can you say it's the World Cup final?
So my experience of this is that as the tournament progresses, the media from other countries starts to go home, and actually it gets a little bit easier to get tickets for the big games. How much of a scramble was it to get a ticket for the final?
Well, you apply through a portal, a kind of an online system, and on Friday it came through that I'd been approved. But I'd been approved. I've been approved for every game. The first two games, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Argentina, Iceland, I'd not been approved for, and I had to get them on a wait list, and I got them with half an hour to spare. But the rest of the tournament was fine. So, look, I think the Irish, I think they treat it as a World Cup, so they're very fair to other nations that necessarily haven't qualified. And obviously, the FAI had a significant role to play, and we thank them for their support as well.
My overriding memory of getting a ticket for the World Cup final in 2006, I was accredited as well, was like there was actually a physical crush of people. There was a person handing out physical tickets. There was no portal back in the day, and there was literally a physical crush. And it turned out there was loads of tickets, but the way it was like there was an hour left before kickoff, and the area that the tickets were being given out and the stadium were quite far apart. So you had to kind of rush, get the ticket, and then it was like, I've actually got a ticket for the World Cup final. It's unbelievable. So that sense of joy. Were your seats good? What was the actual area you were in like? Who were you surrounded by?
Yeah, my seat was good. I think any seat is good. The way these stadiums are set up, the Luzhniki Stadium, Miguel Delaney was behind me with Jonathan Liu. So a lot of English journalists around me. Didn't see Daniel McDonnell or Joe O'Callaghan, but and Ken Early, they've been generally the journalists on the travels. But I know what you're saying. For the Argentina-Iceland game, I had that dystopian feel of that I was chasing scraps in a huddle of about 100. So I know what that feeling is like. But luckily for the final, it didn't transpire that way. But I did feel with Germany, Argentina, Brazil out of the competition, those big countries, journalists wouldn't be here. So luckily enough, Little Old Ireland got in. Tell
us about the atmosphere then, because there's a pre-match which is completely different from the rest of the tournament, and sometimes it helps, sometimes it hinders. What was it like yesterday?
Well, first of all, the branding was different, which I was really taken aback by. The whole branding around the stadium was based around the final. That was really impressive, and it was a beautiful day until the thunder and lightning started, which I thought, though, actually added to the occasion. Ronaldinho came out and started playing the bongo drums after Will Smith had sang at the closing ceremony, and it was an opera singer as well. So it was just a brilliant atmosphere, really electric. The fans from both France, Croatia, and the neutrals, a lot of Brazilians, a lot of Russians, some Mexicans there as well. So some people from Japan it was fitting. I've been to thankfully to a lot of big sporting events. It was just fitting atmosphere for the occasion. So it definitely, the whole place was lifted. And then even after the game, there was a huge fireworks display from the stadium through the city. So it was a pretty amazing day.
There's a sense that yesterday feels like the start of something from a French perspective, doesn't it, John?
I would think so. It reminds me a lot of 20 years ago. The only other time they won the World Cup, they won it with similar enough a striker that didn't have the best of tournaments, Guy Varch, and we had Giroud not having a shot on goal all tournament. That is just madness, really, when you think about it. And it just reminds me of that team. Disciplined, huge team spirit, well organised, some quality players in there, some young players like you had Henry and Trezeguet back in the day, even Mbappe now, and then they just flourished into year 2000 when they played better football and won the tournament. So I can see a hugely bright future for French football after they got the job done yesterday. I got the feeling it was like the 1974 final, if anybody remembers that or has read about it. Holland and West Germany, when Holland were the much better team. But we're 2-1 down at the end of the first half and didn't come back. And I felt Croatia were the better team in the first half. We're unlucky that France, I thought Griezmann bought that free kick for the first goal, which came off Mandzukić's head, then the subsequent free kick and into the net. First ever own goal scored in a World Cup final. And then you had the hugely controversial penalty decision by Nestor Pitana. First ever time VAR was used. That is so 50-50. There's a lot of differing opinion about it. Graham Poll was one of the people coming in favour of the decision. But just the drama of him going to the VAR and the drama after the own goal, and then that France, Griezmann said afterwards in the press conference that he took the penalty like he was playing in the normal match. And you could see that by the way he sent Subasic the wrong way. So after playing such good football, and Perisic with that excellent equaliser, Croatia are 2-1 down at half-time, probably thinking to themselves, how did this happen? Bit of shell shock, and then the second half, on the break, France get 2 goals, one through Pogba, who I thought had a magisterial game, thought he was amazing. And Mbappe, well, second ever, youngest player ever after Pele, 60 years later to score as a teenager at a World Cup final, actually the only other ever teenager to score. So Hugo Lloris had a brain freeze to allow Mandzukic in for the 6th goal of the game, and then the thunders and the rain was bashing down by that stage, and we had that kind of humorous ceremony afterwards with Vladimir Putin having the only umbrella in the place.
Typical. A couple of things. The penalty decision obviously is something, unfortunately, that we are going to have to continuously talk about. I was trying to look back and find exactly what the rules, the International Football Association Board, or whatever it is, IFAB, who set the rules and laws of world football, in their meeting in 2017, they said they were going to talk about handball and trying to make consistency around the ruling, but they didn't come to an agreement. And so it's still there as something that they're going to continue to talk about. And in the office today, we were arguing about it. You say that Graham Poll said it was a good decision. Mark Clattenburg is in the back, I think, of the Telegraph today, or whatever paper he's working for, saying it wasn't a penalty. Nobody knows is the main issue here. Nobody knows definitively that this is a penalty or it isn't a penalty. And that's the most annoying thing really about a World Cup final, because it would have been really interesting to see Croatia maintain parity for a portion of time, either side of half-time, and then see what type of game becomes after that.
Yes, and I think you're trying to look for, in a split-second, intent on the part of the player. And it's very difficult in a split second to determine if... I think with Henry, we knew there was an intent there, back in the Stade de France back in 2009. With Perisic, you just don't know in that split second, is there intent? Is there a deliberate intent? Or is this ball to hand rather than hand to ball? And if the referees are in disagreement about it, then what hope do we have around it? But it is a shame in a way. Dejan Lovren was once again speaking after the game in the mix zone, and he was just saying that it effectively turned the match. Zlatko Dalic was not wanting to get into a blame game with referees. He was very magnanimous in his comments, but once again said that it shouldn't happen in a World Cup final. The decision of that magnitude should be made, but of course it had to be made once the referee decided to go to VAR. Luka Modric was a little bit more guarded, didn't want to get into a discussion about it, just said he was sad about what happened. Obviously he won the golden ball, but you never really felt that Croatia could come back at half-time after going 2-1 down the way France had played, which was not very well. And then France obviously had that cushion then for the second half and could capitalise on that then.
Griezmann finished second in the Golden Ball. Did Mbappe not get in that top 3 because he was winning the young player? How did that whole awards thing work, John?
From my understanding, Mbappe could have been in both. A bit like Tony Kelly for the hurlers, or a few years ago for Clare. So I was surprised Griezmann's not even in my team of the tournament. I thought he played well in the semi-final and final, but to me, Pogba was the player yesterday. Pogba was the man who was everywhere, who ran the show for France and showed what Paul Pogba can be on the greatest stage, whatever about his inconsistent club form. So, it was Modric, Hazard and Griezmann, I think in that order for the Golden Ball. Thibaut Courtois for the Golden Glove. I was wondering, there was such a delay in announcing this. I wondered, did they have Hugo Lloris on the sheet and take him off the sheet after that mistake that he made and put Courtois on it? And Spain, the fair play team, which is something that it feels like about a year ago that they were in the tournament. It was just mad to see Macron there, the president of Croatia, who brought a lot of colour to the tournament, and then just Conor McGregor, obviously, as we've seen, was there as a guest of Vladimir Putin and giving him lots of praise, which has caused a little bit of controversy already. It's just a French team that I think Deschamps said after the game in the press conference, that he said 2 things to the players after the game. He said that you as a 23-man squad will have this binded together for you for life. And he said the second thing he said to them was that whatever you do in your careers and whatever success you achieve, you will never top winning a World Cup final. He also said to the press that the Argentina game was the key moment in their World Cup. He said the group stage is more difficult than the knockout stage, which is an interesting thing to say. And he said then that the trigger for their performances further in the tournament to win the World Cup, where it was that game against Argentina, because he felt that as a big nation, whatever about and beating Messi in that was a pivotal moment in their progression. So interesting things. His press conference was gate crashed by the French players, which is really, really funny. They all just ran in unexpectedly and just started dousing him, presumably with champagne, which was just a mad thing to see happen after a World Cup final. And then what happens is they just all walk past you. So they walk past you with their kit bag and their medals around their neck. The Croatian players first. Some of them stop and talk. Dejan Lovren was great. Says he wants to progress now with Liverpool the next season. And very defiant. Sad but proud. I think he's bittersweet feeling for Dejan Lovren. Luka Modric a little bit more quiet. Said that the golden ball is not something he's just going to discard because he didn't win World Cup. He appreciates the magnitude of winning a golden ball. His English is very good. And then France come through. Saw Rafa Varane with the trophy, clutching it like a newborn child. And that was just an interesting thing to see 2 foot away. And then the rest of the French players coming through. But Paul Pogba was the happiest man I think I've ever seen, just jumping around and having a crack. And deservedly so after the amazing win.
Was Pogba's finals and final performance enough to get him into your team in the tournament?
Well, he was already in it. When I put it up on Twitter a couple of days ago. Now, it has changed because I really do believe, guys, that people can say what they want about games in a tournament. The final is when you need to perform, because the final is when the pressure's on the most. I could see tears from Ivan Rakitic before the game started yesterday. I could see Antoine Griezmann just taking in a bit of breath. And the final for me is a game where you have to deliver if you want to be in a team of a tournament or seen as a great player. So to me, N'Golo Kante is now off my team because of yesterday's performance. Had a poor game, and Hugo Lloris is out of my team because of yesterday's display, because that could have cost France a World Cup if the circumstances had been different, if that happened in the first half, for example.
Let me just read out the team that you had before. So your team was Lloris, Brashalko, Godin, Varane, Hernandez, Kante, Modric, Pogba, Hazard, Coutinho, Mbappe. A 4-3-3 with Hazard and Coutinho playing Mbappe. Would that be right?
Yeah, kind of like Olivier Giroud style, no striker. That's a little bit unfair. Maybe a false nine really situation. Although Kylian Mbappe is a striker, so he'd probably be a Coutinho or him would be in that maybe central role. Hazard on the left, maybe Mbappe on the right, and Coutinho then in a central role. But I didn't really feel there was any great strikers at this World Cup. So Diego Costa was out of the tournament pretty early.
If Lloris is gone, that means Courtois in instead?
Courtois in, and I've dropped Verschalco and I've dropped Conte. So I've put in Courtois, I put in an English player, Kieran Trippier at right back, and I put in Rakitic in midfield for 2 Croatian players. So the team is Courtois, Trippier, Varane, Godin, Hernandez, Modric, Rakitic, Pogba, Mbappe, Coutinho, and Hazard. I'm sure people have different opinions, but for me, Rakitic, I wanted to add him because I think that, okay, there are times in the tournament he didn't play as well as others, but I think he's symbolic of, and he scored 2 penalties in shootouts to win matches. I think he's symbolic of Croatia's progression to a final with Modric in the team. And I think that Trippier had a good tournament at right back, excellent to set pieces. So, and Courtois, well, how could I disagree with people who approved the Golden Glove, although I thought Jordan Pickford had a good tournament as well. So I'm pretty happy now with the 11 I've settled upon.
We had Dave and Nathan pick their team on Friday, and it landed them in quite the hot water on Twitter over the weekend.
John Stones and Sherry Chef. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So they had Pickford in goals. Hernandez at left back is the consensus. Stones, Varane also a consensus. And Trippier is in their team. He's in your team now today as well. They had Kante. That was, in fairness, I think everybody would have had Kante in their team up to the final. Modric and Blaise Matuidi, in retrospect, looks like a complete outlier when you consider that he's probably the 3rd best midfielder that France had over the course of the tournament. Hazard, Mbappe and Cheryshev. Just because it's a World Cup, Cheryshev was probably worth his spot. We've got some comments on this as well. Trippier ahead of Pavard. You've lost all credibility. I mean, I don't know about that. Stones, his lack of concentration led to Croatia winner. I think Stones is worse. Come on, lads. Switched off for the Croatia winner. Stones. Lovren instead of Stones. How the hell does the top scorer not get into it? Are you for real? Harry Kane's not in anybody's team.
Come on, Harry Kane does not deserve to be there.
Now Harry Kane explained the logic. Ye proverbial stones out of that. Stones shouldn't make the 23, never mind the first 11. Not Mbappe, he isn't even a striker. It should be Suarez, Cavani partnership up front. And this probably the first time there's no place for Messi or Ronaldo, even though I thought Ronaldo did okay. Says up the banner in 2013.
I actually don't mind their Matuidi suggestion. That's the one controversial bit there. Well, I see the comments actually didn't actually point him out that much pre-final, I guess.
I think that, like, in retrospect, Pogba's tournament was sensational.
Sure. After yesterday, Pogba kind of swerves to the right on the motorway and overtakes Blaise Matuidi quite comprehensively.
John, this is our last time talking to you from Moscow here on OTB AM. So your final thoughts on, I guess, the trip of a lifetime?
Well, thank you for your support, and thank you for all the people who sent in kind comments over the month. I've had an amazing journey. Very privileged and lucky to be here working. Just final thoughts that I thought the host nation were, I mean, whatever about governments, I thought the people here were just fantastic hosts. And having seen 6 cities and having been to 17 games, it's not a Potemkin village. It's a country like any other. Ordinary people are like each other everywhere you go in the world. And I think what the World Cup brings is that beautiful meld of colour and belonging from all parts of the globe, and it's something that I would recommend to anybody as a fan to go and see. I went as a fan in Germany 12 years ago, so obviously Qatar is a bit of an unknown, in the USA 48 teams, and the Mexico and Canada are far places to go, and that's a long way into the future. I wish we were here as the Republic of Ireland. I wish we'd made it, and the best memories, I mean, the memories are just of attacking football, probably decent refereeing, I have to say. A lot of the games were at flow. Great stories. The Argentina soap opera was an amazing story. Germany being knocked out. Brazil's failure when they were expected to succeed. France being the best team overall, I would say. And really exciting games from Spain, Portugal to Belgium, Japan. And then brilliant stories from Mexico to Croatia. So just a magical experience, one I'll never forget. And I think the biggest experience, or the thing that will never leave me the most, was that spontaneous outpouring of emotion on the streets of Moscow when Russia beat Spain. It was just incredible, and I don't think it's been experienced here possibly since 1945. It was of that magnitude. It's almost like something like that happens, which wasn't expected to happen, and you just leave your home and you go onto the streets and you see what happens. And I think that summed up what the World Cup was, and I think that it's been very successful. And I also think that it's rekindled our love and joy with the international game, which has been a little bit in the shadow of the club game in recent years. And I think it's reminded us of the purity of the international game, and why we love it so much, and why we've always loved it since we were young people. So bring it on again in 4 years. And I think actually that is only every 4 years is also makes it as special as it is, you know. So yeah, thankful.
John, a brilliant tribute to the World Cup after a brilliant month of work from you. Congratulations, thanks very much, and safe home.
Thank you so much, Ger and Owen and everybody else. Thank you.
John Duggan, our man in Moscow, for one final dispatch from the front line.
It was great. It was a fantastic journey. I felt that, you know, we were kind of a little GoPro on John Duggan's shoulder for the entire journey, kind of from the night trains to the lack of vodka, from the hats to the non-alcoholic mules. I've certainly had an emotional trip just by sitting here and watching John Duggan tour around Russia for us. It was beautiful. Of course, you got to wait 8 years now for another Summer World Cup.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Unless they pull it, they're not going to pull it at this stage. They would have done it by now, wouldn't they?
Well, they literally announced the other day that it's going to be happening in November.
What I mean is, like, unless there is like a mad kind of sea change of, okay, we can't put it in Qatar now, but
yeah. Well, let's all trust in FIFA's moral values.
Yes, that's not going to happen.